Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to the video. There's another paid request, this time for John the Zero Cool. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, topics, reactions, commentaries, reviews, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is for GoldenEra, the making of GoldenEye for N64. Now it is on Tubi for free if you want to watch it. And this was really interesting. I never knew there was a documentary on a video game like this. And about an hour and 40 some minutes. And I did not grow up with Nintendo 64. I think maybe around the late mid 2000s. I might have had it for like a little bit. But then I couldn't really find much games for it, and at the time things were going on in my life, so then just gave it away to someone. So I never really played GoldenEye. And then the few bits I did play with the controller, I'm so used to a PlayStation controller or a Super Nintendo controller that the way the N64 controller was, I didn't care for it. I guess if you're more used to it, then you wouldn't be like me. I don't know, just not for me. But to be fair, it wasn't for a good amount of time to properly judge it. But I knew of these games. Super Mario 64, Zelda, all this stuff, Turok, and of course GoldenEye. I mean, GoldenEye has been known as one of the best first-person shooters of all time. It changed the game. I thought this did a good job showcasing why that was the case. I like the quote here: a delayed game could eventually be good, but a rush game is always bad. That could very well be the case. It delves into the company of Rare that was based in the middle of nowhere in England, and there's like barns and silos used and overturned to be offices. I thought that was kind of interesting. How back in the day they were making games like Donkey Kong Country. And they talk about how first-person shooters were kind of young back then. And in fact, they weren't called first-person shooters. They were called Doom clones. And how a lot of those first-person, number one, they were on PC. And they figured, well, it can't really work on game consoles because you need the mouse. And it makes it much easier. The second thing is that it was with Nintendo, because they got the movie tie-in with James Bond, new film GoldenEye coming out, and Rare usually did family games, so this guy, Martin Hollis, he agreed to do it because he wanted to do something different. You do the family games, we'll do this. I do like that they did, a lot of people worked on it, the composer, the character artist, the programmers, designers. It's not too technical and to the point you get confused and it feels like you're in a seminar, but they do tell enough of it. It's a very well edited documentary. It moves at a quick pace. You got, drawings of people. You got kind of video game footage utilized for certain sections. You even get to see some old commercials of some of the stuff back in the day. I thought it was very well put together and edited in a cohesive manner. Although I don't understand when they talk about how movie tie-in games fail. I don't know why the one game they show is the Batman for NES, because that's looked at as one of the better Nintendo games in general. I mean, you could have showed what be X-Men for NES. Well, that's not a movie tie-in, comic book. But I mean, Karate Kid. Even sure, Friday the 13th, I think would make more sense than Batman. I just weird, like, of the movie tie-ins, I'm trying to think, like, what would be the worst movie tie-in on Nintendo? I'm trying to think, the worst on Nintendo? I did that's up for debate. But, like, Karate Kid, I can understand, like, but not Batman for NES. But anyway, so I didn't understand that choice. But I kind of liked hearing the process of what it was supposed to be, how they thought of these ideas, and kind of the journey they took. Now, I did not know that part would end at the 50-minute mark. I thought the whole thing would be about that. But after 50 minutes, they go into other attributes. Now, they were still interesting. but I would say they were not as interesting as about the making of the game. So there's a part of me that I wish they focused just on the making of the game and any other details that could be missed. Like originally, that the game was supposed to be an on-rail, kind of like Time Crisis, where it would move on its own. Or kind of like if you play Die Hard Trilogy, there's a shooter section for Die Hard 2 where the camera's moving and you just aim and shoot. It was going to be the James Bond GoldenEye motif, but they changed that up because it was done with Nintendo. The guy who headed up Nintendo, Miyamoto, they were very much against violent games, and the people's like, well, it's James Bond, he does kill people, and Miyamoto says something like, could the ending be that 007 visits the hospital at the end and shakes people's hands? And they're like, what? I do like, this is what I'm talking about with how well edited it is. They show video game footage and they made it where the video game characters would shaking hands. Like, I like that they incorporate that stuff into it. That they put that in there. But like I said, I liked how they talked with the people, how like they created these environments, but it was so big, it would slow the game down. So how the different ways they had to cut things down. One guy wore this neoprene suit, and I like the conversation where the one guy's talking about how he kept pushing the guy and doing all this stuff to make him fall, to replicate the bad guys and how they fall. How they made it where everything exploded and there was all this collateral damage. Like, I like the bit by bit details of the thought process going into these games. I thought that was very interesting. It made me wish we could see that for all sorts of stuff. Like, so you could easily do this for Resident Evil. You could easily do this for Silent Hill. Or Silent Hill 2. Or Resident Evil 2. Like, there's so many games you could go this depth into that are just as memorable. You know, Metal Gear Solid for PlayStation 1. I just think of all the other things, like if they were as this well done, I would love to see a series of movies like this. A series of documentaries like this. But I don't know how well it did or didn't do. And then they also talk about how they wanted to make the best game possible, so it got delayed. That's why it came out after GoldenEye. I mean, it came out till, what, August of 97, which is getting close to Tomorrow Never Dies coming out. And how it kind of started slow, but then it built all this word of mouth and then got all this praise and awards. And they said what made it work is some very interesting details. Like, even as a guy that never played the game, I've seen people play it, and it was just fascinating. Like, for example, there was a point the multiplayer came in late. They originally was going to have the multiplayer, which became one of the defining features on that game. And then it was supposed to have the other James Bond characters in it. But I guess they talked about how they were told you can't have the other Bonds in it because of rights issues. And then they brought up because it was Sean Connery. Sean Connery would say no. Which I guess he changed his mind with From Russia with Love, because that came out and that had Sean Connery. Although then I don't know why the others weren't in it, like Timothy Dalton or Roger Moore. I don't know if they felt, well, if we can't have him, we can't have the others, or if they felt the same way, or it just they specifically mentioned Sean Connery. I'm like, well, what about the others? But apparently there's one cartridge that does have that, and they talk about how the team played one more game, and I think I won, and I had Roger Moore, because he was my favorite Bond. Like, little details and stories like that were fun to see and fun to find out about. And it says very well edited in terms of not being confusing, not going all over the place, not going 85 directions, and going to this different points of time. And yeah, the game came out. I also like, as a guy that didn't play the game, and there's a lot of people out there who are newer, younger people who don't know about the game, but they've heard about it. So I do like they do explain why fans enjoyed it. They enjoyed the freedom. They enjoyed the big open spaces. So it didn't seem so. It wasn't just get the key card to go here. They give you objectives, but then you kind of figure out how you're going to do those objectives. It wasn't just a Doom clone where you go shoot, 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 key card, open door, leave. It was, oh, you gotta check your watch. You gotta do this. You gotta be maybe use stealth. Maybe use a silencer. Maybe shoot out the cameras. You don't have to shoot out the shoot out the cameras to be more stealthy, and all the details. You can shoot hats off. If you shoot them in the butt, they move. If you shoot them in the leg, they grab their leg, or they shoot them in the arm, they grab their arm. They shoot in the hand. I didn't know this for not playing it. If you shoot someone in the hand, like a bad guy will do this. Like all those details. And then people go, well, what else can you do? That changed a lot of folks on how they approach first-person shooter games and other aspects. You go run and gun, or you can go silence and take out the darts with a silencer. Like that freedom and variables. What's the word I'm looking for? Variety. People appreciated. And it won all the awards, and they even tell a story that apparently Steven Spielberg saw his son playing the game, and that kind of led to a company he worked with, Electronic Arts, doing Medal of Honor, which I remember Medal of Honor for PlayStation 1. And it influenced a lot of people. You see certain, like the people of, I wish they interviewed some of the people with Half-Life, but apparently Half-Life was influenced by that. Apparently Halo. And this is like about 50 minutes an hour in, and then the rest of it's kind of the second half is about other attributes. It's about kind of what happened to some of the people afterwards. Like they made Perfect Dark. Then some left the team and did Time Splitters. And then what brought the company down is that they were called to do a Star Wars game. Of course, Star Wars screwed them over, screwed the fans over, screwed everything over. But they were going to do Battlefront 3. And then they were tasked to do Battlefront, I guess, 4 at the same time. And then so much work and friction, and they were told to do this, then not to do this, and delays. And the company went. So I will admit, that was still interesting. It wasn't as interesting as learning just about the GoldenEye game, but it was still interesting to hear about stuff like that. Obviously, they're not going to be as forthright and honest as I'm sure they want to in dealing with the higher-ups and during that Star Wars game, because they don't want to get people mad. There's certain aspects that I thought they touched on, but then they touched on so briefly, I thought, did it really need to be in here? Like the whole speedrunner stuff. Like they touch on it briefly, like what's a speedrunner? What does a speedrunner do? Okay, a guy speedrun one level of GoldenEye. But again, it was like brought up, and almost as soon as it was brought up, it was kind of gone again. I mean, to be fair, it's like, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes or so, but it's kind of like, okay, speedrunning, but it's just, I don't think it didn't go as deep as it could to really make it interesting. It was just brought up to be like, that's something that people have done. I'm sitting there going, okay, but did it really need to be in there? They do touch on that they were not part of the other James Bond games, and how like Tomorrow Never Dies and others disappointed people. I do like that they brought that up. I wish they would have. I would rather, instead of the speedrunner stuff, go into more detail, like more detail as to why this specific James Bond game didn't work. But maybe they thought they'd be too mean, or they don't want to make fun of other developers, or what the deal was. And then Microsoft, Xbox bought Rare, and I don't even know what happened after it with Rare. And then they go into other aspects, like this guy made Bringing Back GoldenEye fan film, where it looked really goofy. It didn't look like my kind of movie. It looked like a movie that's trying very purposely to be over the top, silly, or goofy, and I don't know, just didn't seem like my cup of tea. So I really wasn't interested in hearing about it. But okay, I did it. Someone did a fan film that involves the game heavily, so that's why. There's an HD remaster. It got canceled. Mods to the game. The mod stuff was a bit more, and like the mod stuff was a bit more interesting than the speedrunner, because I thought the mod stuff, they actually went a bit more detail into it, where like they showed what it looked like, and it looked really good, and they talked with the guy that utilizes it and why he does it, and they even had one of the guys who worked on N64 GoldenEye to play like a multiplayer with them, and like he was supposed to play for an hour, but then he had so much fun he played for 5 hours. And they did a little bit of insight for people who made the game about mods, but I would like to have heard a bit more. And I actually will, if there's anyone who doesn't like the whole mod stuff, I'd like to hear a dissenting opinion. I would like to have heard. I guarantee there are people that don't like mods. I mean, maybe they're afraid they come off as an ass, but I would like to hear the opposite. Like, what do you feel about mods, and what do you feel about? Just, I'm sure there are people that don't care for that stuff. So again, while the finale of it kind of trickled down a bit, where again, I don't care about the Bringing Back GoldenEye fan movie. I don't really the speedrunner stuff again, whatever. But I like that it was a combination of the people who made the game as well as fans and other stuff for the game. I was surprised that sometimes in these documentaries they try to fit in like celebrities in some way or shape or form, but I didn't see that the case here. I mean, I have to assume there's at least one celebrity that likes GoldenEye for N64, but if there was, they weren't in this documentary. Just like sometimes there's others that they drew. Oh, I recognize that guy, or that, or like people I remember from I Love the '80s. That VH1 document. Hal Sparks or someone else in there, but no, not the case. So again, overall, it was a very interesting piece of business. Like I said, it's on Tubi for free. I don't want to give other details away because I don't want to give every single thing away, but it was a very enjoyable bit. And I say, even if you never played the game, like me, if you're all fascinated by video games and what makes them tick a bit, and the history of that era of video gaming, easily worth a watch, easily worth a look, and it was a lot of fun. I wish people would do more of these, because I would enjoy these more than the actual movies we're getting. I didn't do one on. If somehow there's a way to do a series of these, whether it be the video games of Serious Sam, Max Payne, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, or you just Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil 2, like all this stuff, and keep going. That'd be really cool, but of course that takes time and money. But yeah, overall, very good stuff. So with that said, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you guys later.